I wanted to get on here and share something very important that I realized recently. And by recently, I mean yesterday. So, get this, you live in cities for most of your life, and that's what's been happening to me for a lot, like growing up, and then also coming to the US in 2014 for college, grad school, etc. You live in, towns which are like small, then cities that are like a little bit bigger. And the thing is that like cities are full of a lot of fast-paced life. Like people are always on the go. People have their coffee, people have their phones, especially in places like DC and New York. I feel like when I lived on the West Coast in California, life was a little bit slower. Maybe it's because Santa Barbara wasn't exactly a city, but it was like a touristy town. So like everything was like a little bit slower. But here in DC, I feel like very wired into the collective like rush that like everyone seems to be like in, from like the metro commute in the morning all the way to at night when you finish your regular 9 to 5 and then you want to work on your side projects and stuff like that. Everyone in DC and New York has this fascinating attitude where they're always on the go. They're always hardwired to like move on to the next thing very quickly, and it's just like going from A to B in a very quick like manner. And it's very interesting because it makes you think about how human beings as a whole, we have over time, first it was small communities, then it grew into cities, then it's mega cities and stuff like that. And everything moves so fast nowadays with technology and just life in general that it's no wonder people feel burnt out like all the time with all the stuff that they have to do and all the information that they're exposed to when it comes to social media. Even platforms like YouTube are partially responsible for the fast paced nature of life, where you can literally search up anything on any topic or find out news halfway across the world about something happening. So, my point is that we live in a very fast paced environment, and if you're a ambitious person in life when it comes to your career, your life, expectations, etc., then it's very easy to feel burnt out sometimes, you know what I mean? Like it depends on your workload and stuff like that at the same time. So for me personally, I, have this YouTube channel that I'm trying to build. I have my regular 9 to 5. And at the same time, sometimes I feel like very exhausted at the end of the day when I'm exposing myself to such a massive amount of information, trying to figure out like what the next move is, like after I finish my newsletter for my Embassy Life in DC project and just stuff like that. So yesterday, let me paint the scene for you. So yesterday, I usually take like one day off a week from like everything, from like my content creation, from my brainstorming sessions, my journaling that I do, work in general. And I take one day to just decompress, relax, and prepare myself for the week to come. And so I decided to do something different because the weather here in DC is great. I don't know where you, viewer, are based in the world, but at least here in the DC area, the sun is shining, it's blue skies, it's a little cold, but 40 to 45 degrees is normal weather, you could say that. So I was like, you know what I haven't done in a while is hiking. Like when I was in California, I would drive a couple of hours with a couple of friends and stuff like that to go like hiking in Big Sur or like hiking in like the Los Padres National Mountains or National Forest slash mountains, because they're both like in the same biome slash area. And it was fun because like every weekend you could go somewhere new. Like that's one of the beauties of California as a state, is that you have the mountains, you have the sea, you have the land, you have forest in Northern California, because I was mostly in Southern. So you have all these different biomes, but when you live in a city, like for example, DC, you don't really have like a lot of green spaces too much, except for like, the National Mall. And then if you go out to Rock Creek Park, if you look on a map, it's basically like, it's northwest or north, not the Elephant Squirts Water, northwest DC in that area, or maybe like further out. My point is this: I decided to go hiking, and I wanted to just get out of the city and like be surrounded by trees and nature, birds chirping, all the good stuff, to just decompress. And I didn't fully understand the need for that, like not just getting out of the city, but like putting yourself in nature as a way to recharge from just life in general, because of the fact that life is so fast nowadays, and frankly we're not designed to be wired at such a high level, like constantly in fight or flight mode with like work, your hobbies, working out, your daily responsibilities. It can get exhausting. So I was supposed to go to Great Falls, Virginia, I believe it's called, but then I didn't have enough time to plan the trip out. So instead, I went to Lake Vir- Lake Virginia, I think it's called. It's like right next door, or sorry, Lake Fairfax. That's what it is, Lake Fairfax. So it's literally right next door, and it's a quick trip on the metro. So I went there and I brought a book and stuff like that. And I went hiking for at least 3 or 4 hours, just like, trudging through and stuff like that. I'm not a, professional hiker by any means, but, I was hiking and it was fun, and I was surrounded by these trees and these birds. And there were people on BMX bikes, like riding around the trails, other hikers as well. And I kind of just, at one point, I was walking through a particular trail, just talking to myself because that's what I was alone and I had nothing else to do. So I was just talking to myself and I stopped and I kind of looked around and I heard just one bird chirping, like woo, woo, woo. It wasn't an owl, but like it's a stupid impression of what it was. But it was the ambiance and the atmosphere that really like made me realize. And I like kind of breathed in and I breathed out, and all that tension in my body just like floated away, all the stress from like everything that I do and, life that we just live. It was amazing to me that like I felt such a peace. And after the hike, I came back and I was too tired to even think. And then the day after, I was thinking, like, I really needed that, Like, I haven't surrounded myself in nature like that in like a long time because, like, there are embassy events every weekend that I go to in DC. I spend one day, on the weekend, like doing the newsletter, content creation, and now filming YouTube videos. So it's just like, I didn't realize how much I needed that. And I went, to the trees and tree huggy as this sounds or whatever. I like breathed in and I breathed out and I was like, my God, it's so peaceful here. And there was no sounds except for like the birds chirping and the trees rustling. And I was like, I understand why people want to live in rural areas now, more so than urban. And I always thought that was weird because when I lived in Maine for like 10 months doing another job that was out there, I was in a rural area. Like Maine is largely rural, except for if you live in the city of Portland. So I wasn't based in Portland, I was in Kennebunkport, which is like a small coastal fishing village. So it's like there wasn't a lot of people there. And like during the wintertime, it was dead just because of the fact that like, everything froze and like it's cold as heck. So snowbirds go to Florida, etc., etc. So I like was living in the rural areas for a while, for almost a year, and it drove me almost insane because like I'm a social butterfly, so like, I like to interact with people and also be surrounded by people, and like Maine is full of families, people are married, people have kids, and like a young guy that's barely 26, doesn't really like know how to find people like that, especially in like a rural setting like that. So anyway, it was hard for me to like Maine because like yeah, it was full of nature and it's gorgeous, but like I'm more of a city guy at heart now that I've experienced like DC and just looking back at both experiences, it's like I would pick a city over a rural area, but that city life is very overwhelming because it's so fast paced, like going from A to B to C to D and just like constantly doing stuff. So anyway, the need for surrounding yourself in nature and just kind of recharging from life is super important. And I think that goes for everybody. It certainly goes for me when I realized that I just, I don't know, I had not surrounded myself in nature for a long time. And like in DC, DC is better than other major cities in like the United States, like when it comes to green spaces. Like we have the National Mall and we have parks like throughout the city and stuff like that. So it's not that, concrete of a jungle, but like we have green spaces where, sometimes it's good, but like you want to be completely surrounded, right? So like you go to Virginia and like the woods are right there. Or there's a place called like Shenandoah Caverns, which is like completely underground and like it's a tourist area. So it's nice to just surround yourself with nature and just breathe in and breathe out, like it's gonna be okay. life is fast, finish what you can in a day and just, move on to the next thing. But I just didn't realize how much I needed that until I was like literally in the moment, and I was trying to be really good about not checking my phone, as much, just because like I didn't want to use it too much to be distracted by, checking my mail and like check all the social medias and stuff. And I just sat there on a log and I was eating lunch. I had my book out and I was saying hi to the trail people, and I was like, holy crap, like this is this is pretty cool. You know what I mean? Like it was just um it's hard to describe. The closest description that I can come up with my limited vocabulary. I'm not a Nobel Prize winner laureate by any means, but the closest like feeling that I could describe it is just like a sense of serenity, like peace. You know what I mean? Like away from the city, away from all the craziness that's going on in the city nowadays. Like not just in DC, but all over. I won't go into that. That's a separate thing entirely. But it was just like you could breathe easy, and everyone was nice, everyone was kind. You could get away from the main trails if you wanted to, but you could get lost, you never know. But it's just like it was so peaceful. And then when I came back, that's when it really hit me. I like came back and I went to the store. I went to the store, and immediately I was surrounded by like, a bunch of people, and I kind of got a little bit depressed because I was just like, oh my God, I was in such a peaceful mindset before, and now it's just like people are so close to me. Like it was a Sunday, to be sure, so Sunday night here in DC at the Trader Joe's in Noma down the street. It gets so busy all the time, but it just made you think like in the future, once I get like older and stuff like that as well, and I can afford to like live in more maybe more affluent areas and stuff like that, because I don't want a roommate. I just want to live by myself. um, it would be nice to live. It's a weird paradox. It's like I want to live in more green spaces, but I don't want to be isolated from like a city center, for example. So it's just like, where's the balance between those two factors? I wonder if like cities abroad have that, like Amsterdam or Dublin or something like that. I remember seeing that's when like urban planning, to go off on another tangent, urban planning is like such an important concept when it comes to city life, because you basically shoehorn people into like a set area, right? And it's like you stack buildings on top of each other for people to live in, and then people wonder why they're depressed and they're angry all the time, like with traffic and all this stuff. And that's why city planning is so important, where you can have green spaces to decompress, to cool off in the summer when things get too hot. I think Europe does a really good job with their cities, from what I've like observed when it comes to city planning just in general. um, I work in the environmental science field, so it's just like you kind of go off on a tangent and research urban city planning for some reason when you get bored. And like some cities have like a really good way of just like planning different like green spaces throughout the city. It's very fascinating. Like for any of you that are interested in urban planning, I would encourage you to look at urban planning through the UNEP, the United Nations Environmental Program. They do a really good job of planning green cityscapes, they call it, like across, and then you can get into like vertical gardening and green spaces. It's pretty fun. So the whole point of just this entire video is to remind you to go out into nature. Remember that life is super fast paced nowadays with the newest Apple Vision Pro and like all these different technologies that are coming out. But at the same time, it's okay to breathe, and it's okay to take a break from stuff that if it gets too overwhelming. So like and subscribe for more, with more morning/afternoon chats as these concepts come to my mind and I just want to talk about them in front of a camera. So hope you're doing well.